Think of a dead horse. Now think of it being beaten. Yup, that idiom pretty much summarizes my problem with anime manga industry. God, it is just so annoying to even talk about it. I mean, haven't we had enough of this? I mean, they thought the manga writers had it worse, or how Mappa Studios treats its employees. No, clearly not. It's not even about the same template that all anime are following. Okay, wait, maybe it is about that. Just a little bit. Today, we talk about not only that, but some of the unintended consequences that are born of it, alongside the reasons that it has become so prevalent. Tropes, cliches, trends, essentially the isekai effect. One particular show gains massive acclaim. A dozen copycats pop up to ride the coattails of that show and attract the same demographic. 24 more copies show up, and so on and so forth. But this is something that's always been present to some degree. It has never been quite as rampant as it's become since the era of isekai, with even the most run-of-the-mill anime gaining success just off the merit of it being in the same genre as titans of the industry. It's only natural that this trend would go on to seep into other genres. Now, when we talk about sports anime, when it comes to the latter, there's a lot. And while most of them differentiate themselves, at least in terms of the sport that it's focused on, there's yet another subgenre that's even more saturated. You might have already guessed it, considering one of the latest releases. I'm talking about baseball anime. But now, you might ask, why is that a problem when there are so many other sports animes? Well, for lack of a better way to word it, most of the world just doesn't care about baseball. After the country of its creation, the US, Japan is perhaps the country with the biggest following for the sport, a result of baseball being one of the first sports introduced to the country at the time of the Meiji period. Simply put, the sport's popular as hell there because it's been around for a hell of a long time. Unlike soccer or volleyball though, it's one that remains largely untouched on a global scale. I mean, seriously, for all the baseball fans watching this, go ahead and comment what country you're from, and it'll show exactly what I'm talking about. Coming to the anime themselves, they're not exactly the most unique or standing out from each other either. Don't get me wrong, they're all great shows individually with different overarching themes. The likes of Major, Ace of Diamond, and One Ounce are all awesome to watch. The core concept, however, remains the same. That being of a prodigy pitcher who blows someone away with their potential and gets recruited for a higher calling. Unfortunately, when you have so much of the same thing, it just starts losing its charm. Don't believe me? Let's take a closer look then. Major, a multi-season hit show, tells the story of Garo Honda from his childhood all the way to adolescence as he follows in the footsteps of his professional baseball player father, who did his best to make his son proud. That's extremely wholesome, and each season of the anime has its own charm as you watch Goro grow from a wide-eyed kid to a determined young adult. At its core though, the story boils down to the prodigal son who's determined to be the best at the sport he loves. To help that going from season 1 to 2, viewers are hit with whiplash as the protagonist's role suddenly gets passed down from father to son. Talk about pulling a Tekken 2. Or is that more of a Boruto? On to the next. Then we got Ace of Diamond. Eijun Sawamura starts off screen by losing. Despite his loss on the pitch though, his potential is seen by a recruiter, and he gets hauled off to a prestigious high school where his talent can be nurtured and made to flourish. A story about a young man who finds himself in a world vastly different from the one he's used to and does his best to fit into. It's an inspiring journey and a great watch, but again, the story boils down to an undiscovered baseball prodigy who's determined to be the very best at his passion. And let's not forget the genius rival trope with his peer either, Satoru Furuya, who just so happens to be totally cracked at pitching, an underdog MC and genius deuteragonist. Where have I seen this before? And last but not least, One Ounce is actually a bit of a standout from the others, and that is purely in regards to the motivations of the main character, Towa Tokuchi. Prodigy at baseball? Check. Impresses someone who becomes determined to recruit him? Check. Loves the sport? Nope. This dude's all about the bag and sees it as nothing more than a cash cow he can milk with his pitching and game IQ. Despite its much more gritty and harsh setting, the plot of One Ounce still lands Tokuchi in a spot where he needs to be the best at what he does. Not out of passion for the game, like the previous two protagonists, but out of his passion for money. Nonetheless, it too boils down to a pitching prodigy who wants and needs to be the very best and never lose. Now, let's take a break for a minute listen and assess. Each of these shows individually are incredible. Their success speaks for itself. However, in the modern day landscape of the industry, there's only so large of an audience for the same thing over and over. With the isekai boom, it worked because everyone could enjoy the idea of getting sent to a fantasy world and becoming an OP hero. With rom-coms and slice of life shows, there's a certain appeal for pretty much anyone in that rough age group. With baseball anime, well, who's gonna keep watching when they don't care for the sport itself? Enter Bokyaku Battery, the latest in the genre, but it's too early to know if it can become the greatest, though it has a rather interesting premise. It's just not something that's getting the public's attention since it started airing. At this point, the crowd has had its fill of baseball anime, and the latest entry is one that feels unnecessary. Even though the anime has a cast and team that rivals that of Haiku Season 3, it's hard to see it taking off when it's just a rehash of what we've already seen, with a fresh coat of paint and some new fancy bells and whistles. Not that anything could hold a candle to the banger that is Haiku anyways, but still. Maybe I'm wrong and people will start raving about it days after I post this and make me look like an idiot. Maybe I'm right, and it's destined to fail purely because of the subgenre it's in. Or maybe there's just too damn many baseball anime.